Today, we are moving on to a very essential concept in programming, which is called as control flow. So far, we have explored different types of data in Python, and the next step is to understand control flow, which will help us make our programs more dynamic. And we will learn how to respond to different conditions and take appropriate actions depending on certain conditions. So, control flow refers to the order in which a certain set of statements in Python are executed. For example, if we are asking someone to enter how much marks they have scored, and depending on the marks, we want to show whether they have passed or not. So, if they have passed, for example, if they have scored more than 40 marks, then we want to say that you are pass. If they have scored less than 40 marks, then we are going to say you are fail. Or say, for example, if someone has scored more than 90 marks, then we want to say you have scored A grade. If they have scored between 80 to 90, we want to say you have scored B grade, and something like that. So depending on something, we want to take certain action, and these are also popularly called as conditional statements or conditional control flow. So if we talk about control flow, there are a few different types. Of the first and the most common one is conditional statement, which is the example I just gave. Other than that, we also have loops, and we have some branching statements like break, continue, pass, etc. So in this video, we are going to focus on conditional statements. We'll see what is the syntax and where do we apply, and we'll do some practice. And in the upcoming modules, we'll also take a look at loops and other kind of control flow. So let us get started with the basic syntax of if else, or even before that, let us take an example and try to understand where control flow or conditional statements might come into picture. So here I've put down some notes for you to revise, but let us get started. Let us say that we have a condition that the example that I just gave is take ask the user to enter and if the marks are greater than passing marks, then we need to show he's passed. Otherwise, we need to show fail. If marks are more than passing marks, okay. So this is the condition. So first, let us ask the user to enter his marks. So let us say marks, or let us first just write down the marks. We can ask the user later. Let me say the marks is 50, and let me say that the passing marks that has been decided is maybe 30. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to check whether marks is greater than passing marks, and if that is true, if that condition is true, then we want to do something. And if that condition is not true, then we want to take some other action. And this is called as conditional statement. Okay, let me write here. There are three types of conditional statements. One is called as if else, and we have sometimes we just have if, and then we have if else, and then we have if elif else. It's a very So what is the way to check whether marks is greater than passing marks? We know about conditional statements which we have learned. So we can say marks greater than passing marks. Okay, so we are getting true. For all future discussions, this statement we can also refer to as a condition. This is a condition, and condition can be true or false. This is a condition. Marks is greater than passing marks. Okay. In even in real life, we say things like, "I'll give you something on the condition that you pass." So, which means basically that there is a condition that will generate a boolean which will be true or false, and depending on this boolean, we want to take some action. Which means that if this condition is true, then I want to do something. If not, then I want to do something else. So in Python, to check that, we use a keyword called if. Okay. So if you write if, you see it is getting into green color, which means it is the reserved word in Python. And we say if this condition is true, okay, and then we use a colon here. And if you press enter, automatically your text will be indented one tab to the right, which is 4 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So if you come here and if you press enter, automatically you are getting an indentation. And I've told you earlier that in Python, indentation is very, very important. And anything that I write in this indentation will be executed only if this condition is true. Only if this condition is true. Okay. So what do we want to do if the person has scored more than passing marks? We want to say something. So we can say print you have passed. Okay. So now let us take the marks here, put it here, and say the person passing marks is 30 and the person is scoring 50 marks, so he has passed. Let me say what happens if he scores 10 marks. It does not do anything. Why? Because this condition will be executed only if this condition is true. If this condition is not true, in this case, nothing is going to happen because we have not told what they're supposed to do. So this alone is one type of conditional statement where we are executing something basis a condition, but we also want to do something in case this condition is not true. If this is true, do this. If this is not true, we want to do something else. In that case, we use a keyword which is called as else. And again, you see, this if and else are aligned with each other. And whatever I'm going to write inside this else, for example, print, and let me write one congratulations here. So here, this block of statement, and here I've written just one line, but you can write any number of lines here. So if the person is passing here, this block of code is going to get executed. And if the person is failing, then this condition is going to get executed. So let us just try now. It says you have failed. And if I change it to maybe 80, then it says congratulations, you have passed. So what are we doing? We are writing conditional statements, or we are controlling the flow in Python. Depending on something, we want this to be run, and if that condition is not true, we want this condition to be run. So this is called as a basic control flow in Python, and within control flow, this type of control flow is called as conditional statements. Basis some condition, we are taking some action. Okay, so we looked at if and else, and actually the question was to ask the user to enter his marks, and if the marks are more than passing marks, then we want to show. So here we are not asking the user to enter the marks. Let us do that. Let us say input, enter the marks, enter your marks. Okay, and when the user enters the marks, it is going to be a string I've shown you earlier. So let me convert it to an integer. And now you can see we are getting a prompt to enter the marks. Let me enter the marks here, 90, and it says congratulations, you have passed. And if I enter 10, it says you have failed. So I hope you got to understand how a basic if and else works. Next, let us talk about if else, or let us do one more example so that we can appreciate if else, and we can also discuss about nested if else. So now let us look at one more example, which is an extension of previous example. So here the question says that we want to ask the user to enter the marks, and if the marks are more than passing marks, then definitely we want to show that he's pass, otherwise fail. But we will add some extra conditions that if the student has scored more than 90 marks, then we are going to show that he has A grade. And if the student has scored between 80 to 90, then we want to show B grade. Otherwise, we just want to show that he has passed. Okay, so this is including multiple conditions. So let us try and see what we are going to do. So we are going to ask for marks. Let us say marks is 90, and then we are going to check if marks greater than passing marks. Then what do we want to do? Suppose for the first check is that we want to check whether the marks is greater than passing marks. Once we have checked that, definitely we are going to show that he's pass, but we also want to show the grade, and in a certain condition the grade is going to be A grade, and in certain condition it is going to be B. So once we have checked the marks is greater than passing marks and we are inside this block, we are going to assume that this condition is true for a moment, and then we are going to imagine what are we supposed to do once we are sure that the marks is greater than passing marks. We want to check whether the marks is greater than 90 or not. And if the marks is greater than 90, then we want to show that you have passed and you have secured A grade. And if that is not true, then we want to check whether the marks is more than 80. In that case, we want to show that you have passed along with B grade. And if none of these conditions are true, but if the marks are greater than passing marks, which means that he has passed, but he has not scored more than 80 marks, in that case, we want to show that we just want to show you have passed. And if this condition itself is not true, then we want to show you have failed. So let us see how we can structure this. If the marks is greater than passing marks, then we want to do something. Let me write that condition a little bit later, and for now I can just write pass here. Pass here means that don't do anything, and this is a placeholder, and I'm saying that I'm going to come later and I'm going to write the logic here. Okay, and here I'm going to say else. So if the person has not scored more than passing marks, then definitely he has failed. So we are going to say, so this part is sorted, and then we have to come back here and write what will happen if the person has passed. So if the person has passed, we again need to check whether he has scored more than 90 or not. So we are going to write a if statement inside a if statement. Okay, this is a nested if condition inside if condition. So I'm going to say if marks is greater than 90, or let me say greater than equal to 90. In that case, what do I want to say? I want to say print you have passed with A grade. And if this condition is not true, which is else, then again we need to check two things. There are two possibilities. Either he has scored more than 80 marks, or he has not scored more than 80 marks. If he has scored more than 80 marks, then I have some message to show, which is you have passed with B grade. So again, I'm going to check if marks are greater than 80. If marks greater than 80, then I want to write the same statement, and I'm going to say you have passed with a B grade. And if not, that means he has just passed. So I'm just going to say you have passed. But not secured any grade. And if none of this is true, then we are going to go to else block. Now keep in mind that if someone has scored more than 90, then he has also scored more than 80. So you might think that this condition is also true and this condition is also true, so both the lines might get executed. No, in a if else block, either the if block will be executed or the off block will be executed, and not both of them. If this condition is already met, then the code will never go to this block, and if we have gotten inside this if block, then we are never going to go inside this else block. So either one of the conditions are going to get executed, not multiple. So now we have the code ready. Let us try to run this, and it says you have passed with A grade because the marks is 90. Let me make the marks as 85. Then it says you have passed with B grade, and if I say maybe just 60, then it says you have passed. I misspelled it here. It says you have passed but not secured any grade. And let me say if the person has scored just 10 marks, then it says you have failed. So depending on the condition, I'm able to control what message I'm going to show. So this is a nested if else, or if else inside if else. Let us look at one alternate syntax to do the same thing, which is called as using elif. Okay, so we can also use the keyword elif to write the same statement. In that case, what we do, if we have if and then we have else, and within the else we again have a if, we can actually not use this else, and we can use the keyword elif. Okay, by the way we have written this is completely acceptable and correct. What I'm showing you is an alternate way of writing this. So we can say elif, and we can bring the condition here. Elif marks is greater than 80, then we want to execute this, and else we are going to execute this. Let me add one more condition just so that, okay, let me add one more condition here, and let me say if the marks is show B grade, if 70 to 80, then show C grade. Okay, I'm adding one more condition. So what do we want to do? Marks is greater than 90, then he's passing with A grade. Marks greater than 80, then we are passing with B grade. We can add one more elif statement, which is if marks greater than 70, or let me make greater than equal to 70. Here also let me make it greater than equal to 80. And if this condition is true, I'm going to copy this and put it here, and I'm going to say you have passed with C grade. So this is also one way of writing the statement where we are using if, elif, elif, and then else. Okay, so it says you have failed, and if I say I have scored 90 marks, then it says you have passed with A grade. So this condition is also working. Now let us try to figure out what can be some problems with this system. Say for example, here we have defined passing marks to be 40, but we are asking the user to enter the marks. So let me have this as int input, enter the marks. So this is working fine. But can you think of some edge cases or some problems that we might encounter while we are running this logic? Okay, so it is possible that the user can enter maybe negative marks. What happens if someone enters negative marks? Suppose I enter minus 10. Of course, marks can't be negative. I mean, it can be negative if you have negative marking, but for this example, let us assume that marks cannot be negative. But if a user has entered minus 10, then we are going to say you have failed. But this is not a good idea. If a user has entered minus 10, then we want to show to the user that you have entered an invalid input, please try again, something like that. Okay, and if the user enters something that is more than 100, suppose the full marks is 100 but user has entered 108, again this is an invalid input. So we need to make sure that whatever user is entering is between 0 to 100. Okay, so what can we do? Try to think about that condition, invalid input. So we are going to handle invalid input again by using some kind of if statement, and we can do it in multiple ways. The first thing is that when we are entering marks, we can check if marks is greater than 0 and marks less than equal to 100. Okay, marks can be equal to 0 as well. I want to do this entire thing only if this condition is true, which means if the marks is greater than 0 and marks is greater than 100. Let me put this in brackets. I want to do evaluation only if both these conditions are met. If the marks is greater than 0 and less than 100. If this condition is not met, then I want to say print. I want to say print you have entered invalid input. Okay. So now we have also handled some edge cases. So now if I say -10, it says you have entered invalid input. And if I enter something maybe 103, then also says you have entered invalid input. But if I enter 90, then it works fine. I hope you got to know. Now there are multiple ways of writing this line. We can also write this line in this way. If 0 is less than marks is less than 100. We can also write the same line this way. This is also acceptable way of writing. If we write 109, it is saying invalid input. And if we say -10, then also it says invalid input. We can write it like, and we can also try to write the condition here. So marks is greater than passing marks, but marks is less than 0. Okay, so you can also write this line as this way. If marks is less than 100, we can also write it this way. So whenever you are choosing any syntax, maybe you are trying to write like this or like this or like this, make sure the way you write is very readable and very understandable for other people who are trying to read your code. Let us look at one more example of if else. Let us look at one alternate syntax of if else. This is called as a single line, and sometimes these are also called as ternary operators. Again, what it is called is not very important, but let us look at the syntax. So say for example the question is that we want the user to enter a number and we want to show whether the number is even or not. Okay, so we are going to ask the user to enter a number. So let me just say number is equal to 10, and then we want to show whether this number is even or not. So what is going to be the condition? How do we check whether a number is even or not? First of all, so to be able to check if a number is even or not, we divide that number with 2, and if the remainder is 0, that means the number is divisible. If the remainder is not 0, that means the number is odd. So let me just quickly show you. If we do number or just 10, and we use this modulus division, I think I have shown you this. Modulus division by 2 is equal to 0. If this is true, that means this number is even. If I say 11, then this is false. So this is the way to check whether a number is even or not. And you see this is returning a boolean, so this itself becomes a condition. So we can say if this, and then we can say print even, and else if this condition is not true, then we can say print odd. So if this is 11 and if I make it 12, then it is even, and instead of 12 I can just refer to the number here. What happened? Sorry, number has to be run, and we are getting even and odd. Now this is completely fine, but you see this condition is quite simple, and what we are doing is again very simple. Based on this condition we are printing something, and instead of printing, we can also, what we can do, we can assign a value to a variable. We can say result is equal to let us not have any result, and if the number is true, we can say result is equal to even, and if the number is odd, then we can say result is equal to odd. So here we are assigning a value to a variable depending on the condition. So when we are using conditional statement, it is not just for printing something. We can have any kind of block of code here, and here I'm using a block of code to assign a value to a variable. And if this condition is true, the value will be assigned. Otherwise, this value will be assigned. So value is also being assigned based on a condition. So here we can then print result. Okay, so we are getting even. Now this entire block of code is quite simple, and instead of using 4 lines to write this, there's an alternate syntax which is called as a single line if else statement that will allow us to write this in just a single line, which is we can write it this way. We can say result is equal to even. Okay, result is equal to even if number 0 else odd. So what does this line mean? This line means that assign even to result if this condition is true, otherwise make it also make it odd. And now if we look at result, you see we are getting even, and this will depend on number. Number is equal to maybe 8, it says even, and if I say 81, then it says odd. So we are assigning a value to the variable result using a single line if else condition. This is also a very common way of writing, and if you want, you can also write nested if else conditions here, but again that is not a very good idea. For example, let us take the previous case of assigning grade. Okay, so we can say that grade is equal to, and use single line if else conditions only if the if else conditions are very simple. If it is complicated and there are too many if else's, and if there are a lot of nested if else's, then it is not a good idea to write it that way. It's not that it is wrong, but it will make it difficult to read. So if there are a lot of if else, then this is easier to read. But just for the sake of an example, I'm going to show you how we can implement this condition here. So we can say grade is equal to A if marks greater than passing marks, and marks, or we can say, we can write it this way, or okay, let me write it complete way and then I will show you the alternate. So marks is greater than passing marks and marks greater than 90. Okay, else what do we do? Else, let me, for now, let me just say fail. Okay, for now. So let me say, let me take marks here, let me put marks here as 90, and then let me look for grade. It says fail because marks is greater than, here I've put greater than, so I have to put greater than equal to. It says A, but if I say 80, then it becomes fail. Why? Because else statement, I again need to write something. So in else statement, again I'm going to write if marks greater than 80, and I'm going to say here, the syntax might be a little bit complicated. B if marks greater than 80, and then I'm going to say else fail. So I'm failing anyone who's, let me say B. Okay, and then if you say, if I put maybe 87, it says 87, then it says B, and if I say 98, then it says A. And you see already it has gotten started becoming complicated. And if I want to break these lines, I can use a slash here so that it becomes readable and we can shift the code to the next line. And it says else like this, and again we can come here, and this else we can further simplify, and I can say C if marks greater than 70, greater than equal to 70, else, and again this fail, I can make a change. We can say just pass if marks, else just pass. I think this is fine. Let me arrange the code this way, and I'm going to indent it a little bit. And you see, it is already becoming so much more complicated to read, and it is so much better to write the code this way. So you see what I've done here: A if marks greater than passing marks and marks greater than 90, you can put this under one condition, and otherwise B if marks greater than 80, else, and inside that else again we have a ternary operator. C if marks is greater than 70, else, again we are saying just pass if the marks greater than passing marks, else fail. So let us try if this is working. If I say 98, if I say 18, it is saying failing. If I'm saying 8, it is fail. And then if I say 75, then it should say 75, it should say C. So the code is working, but this is not a very good way to write. So you can use a ternary operator, or you can use a single line if else, if the logic is very simple. Otherwise, try to use this way. So I hope you got a good understanding of conditional statements. And in the coming video, we'll try to do more examples of conditional statements. And after that, we'll move on to loops. Thank you.